It was not written for people who already have their money figured out, who have investment portfolios and emergency funds and retirement accounts humming along in the background of their comfortable lives. This book was written for the person sitting in their car in a parking lot, checking their bank balance before they go into the grocery store, just to make sure the card won't decline. It was written for the person who works hard, genuinely works hard, and still somehow ends up with nothing left over at the end of the month. It was written for the person who has tried budgeting apps, and savings challenges, and motivational YouTube videos, and none of it has stuck longer than 3 weeks. It was written, honestly, for the version of me that existed years ago, anxious about money every single morning, not because I was lazy, but because nobody had ever sat me down and explained how any of this actually worked. What you are holding, or listening to, is a 90-day roadmap. Not a philosophy. Not a vibe. A specific, step-by-step plan that begins today and ends with you in a fundamentally different financial position. Some of it will feel uncomfortable. Some of it will require honesty that is hard to sit with. But every single step is practical, every single tool is real, and every single result is achievable, not in 10 years, not after a promotion, not when circumstances are perfect. Starting today. Starting now. Let us begin. The Money Shift. 90 days to rewire your relationship with money. Break every bad habit, and build a life you actually own. An audiobook for anyone who is tired of being broke, stressed, and one paycheck away from everything falling apart. Narrator's Guide Edition. Full script, unabridged. Table of contents. A note before we begin. Prologue, the day I checked my account and felt sick. Part 1, The Awakening, days 1 to 21. Chapter 1, The Lie You Were Told About Money, days 1 to 7. Chapter 2, The Cut That Doesn't Hurt, days 8 to 14. Chapter 3, Pay Yourself Like You Mean It, days 15 to 21. Part 2, The Attack, days 22 to 49. Chapter 4, Making Debt Your Enemy, Not Your Lifestyle, days 22 to 28. Chapter 5, The $1,000 Wall, days 29 to 35. Chapter 6, The Garden You Plant Today, days 36 to 42. Chapter 7, What You Earn Is Not Fixed, days 43 to 49. Part 3, The Build, days 50 to 90. Chapter 8, The Target on the Wall, days 50 to 56. Chapter 9, Credit, the Double-Edged Tool, days 57 to 63. Chapter 10, Your Real Financial Report Card, days 64 to 70. Chapter 11, The Honest Check-In Nobody Wants to Do, days 71 to 77. Chapter 12, Building for the Life That Comes Next, days 78 to 90. Epilogue, The Person You Become. Final words from the author. A note before we begin. This book was not written for financial experts. It was not written for people who already have their money figured out, who have investment portfolios and emergency funds and retirement accounts humming along in the background of their comfortable lives. This book was written for the person sitting in their car in a parking lot, checking their bank balance before they go into the grocery store, just to make sure the card won't decline. It was written for the person who works hard, genuinely works hard, and still somehow ends up with nothing left over at the end of the month. It was written for the person who has tried budgeting apps, and savings challenges, and motivational YouTube videos, and none of it has stuck longer than 3 weeks. It was written, honestly, for the version of me that existed years ago, anxious about money every single morning, not because I was lazy, but because nobody had ever sat me down and explained how any of this actually worked. What you are holding, or listening to, is a 90-day roadmap. Not a philosophy. Not a vibe. A specific, step-by-step plan that begins today and ends with you in a fundamentally different financial position. Some of it will feel uncomfortable. Some of it will require honesty that is hard to sit with. But every single step is practical, every single tool is real, and every single result is achievable, not in 10 years, not after a promotion, not when circumstances are perfect. Starting today. Starting now. Let us begin. Prologue. The day I checked my account and felt sick. I want you to think about the last time money made you feel afraid. Not the abstract, far-off kind of afraid. The immediate, stomach-dropping kind. The kind where you open an app or look at a statement and a number on the screen punches you somewhere you cannot quite describe. Maybe it was the rent due date. Maybe it was a medical bill that arrived on a Tuesday when you thought everything was fine. Maybe it was watching your friends talk about a vacation they are planning and realizing you cannot even afford to think about that right now. I remember my moment. I was 26 years old, sitting in my kitchen at 11:30 at night, with a cup of tea that had gone cold because I had been staring at my laptop for 40 minutes. My checking account had $83 in it. I had a credit card bill due in 5 days. I had a car payment in 11. And I had no idea, genuinely, not a single clear idea, where the rest of my paycheck had gone. I was not a careless person. I was not blowing money on luxury. I had a regular job, a reasonable apartment, a normal life. And somehow I was falling behind every single month, like there was a leak somewhere in my finances that I could never quite find. Here is what nobody told me back then. The problem was not that I did not earn enough money. The problem was that I had never been taught to manage it. We spend 12 years in school learning mathematics, literature, history, and science. We spend 4 more in college or trade programs mastering our careers. And at no point in most of our educations does anyone sit us down and say, here is how a paycheck actually works. Here is what debt does to your future. Here is why the way you think about spending is costing you more than you realize. Financial literacy is the most important subject that is almost never taught. And the result is millions of adults, hardworking, intelligent, capable adults, living their lives one unexpected bill away from disaster. This book is the conversation nobody had with you. It is 90 days long because real change does not happen in a weekend. But it is also structured so that every single week, you will have one concrete action to take. One thing that moves the needle. By the time we reach day 90, you will not just have a better bank account. You will have a different relationship with money entirely. The anxiety will not be gone. Money is always worth taking seriously, but it will be replaced by something much more powerful. Understanding. And a plan. Let us get to work. Part 1. The Awakening. Days 1 to 21. In which we stop running from the numbers and finally face them. Chapter 1. The lie you were told about money. Days 1 through 7, face the truth. There is a very comforting lie that most of us tell ourselves about our finances. The lie sounds like this: I have a pretty good sense of where my money goes. And I say this with complete compassion, because I believed this lie for years. You almost certainly do not. Not because you are unintelligent. Not because you are irresponsible. But because our brains are genuinely terrible at tracking dozens of small transactions across an entire month and building an accurate picture from them. We remember the big purchases. We forget the $30 ones. And the $30 ones, multiplied by 12 months, are often where everything falls apart. The exercise that changes everything. Here is what I want you to do in the next 7 days, and I want you to take this seriously even if it sounds simple. Pull up your last 3 months of bank statements. Every single account. Every credit card. Everything. Go through every transaction, and I mean every one, and place it into one of 3 buckets. Bucket 1 is your fixed costs. These are the things that must get paid no matter what. Your rent or mortgage. Your utilities. Your phone bill. Your groceries. Your insurance. The non-negotiables. Bucket 2 is your lifestyle spending. This is everything that makes life enjoyable but is, in some form, a choice. Restaurants. Coffee shops. Streaming subscriptions. Shopping. Entertainment. Travel. All of it. Bucket 3 is your debt payments. Credit card minimums. Student loans. car payments, personal loans. Everything that represents money you owe to someone else. Add up each bucket. Then write down your total monthly take-home pay. Look at the gap. What the numbers will tell you. Most people who do this exercise are genuinely surprised. Not always because they are spending wildly, often they are not, but because seeing the actual numbers laid out is different from sensing them vaguely in your head. Take the story of a woman named Priya. She was a 31-year-old marketing manager earning $4,000 a month after taxes. She considered herself reasonably responsible. She did not have any expensive hobbies. She thought she was doing fine. When Priya did this exercise, she found that her fixed costs totaled $1,800. Her debt minimums were $400. And her lifestyle spending, the category that surprises almost everyone, was $1,400 a month. The math left her with $400 at the end of every month. And since she was never deliberate about that $400, it always seemed to dissolve into additional spending before she could save any of it. She did not have an income problem. She had a visibility problem. Once she could actually see where the money was going, she could make real decisions. The first honest conversation you will have with yourself. I want to be clear about what we are doing in these first 7 days. We are not making changes yet. We are not cutting anything or rearranging anything. We are simply looking. One honest hour with your bank statements will teach you more about your actual financial situation than years of vague intentions ever will. There will likely be a moment when you see a number and feel embarrassed or frustrated. Let that feeling exist for a moment. Then let it pass. You are not here to judge the past. You are here to understand it so you can change the future. Write down what you find. Keep it somewhere you will see it. This is your starting line, and knowing exactly where you are starting is the first act of real financial courage. Chapter 2. The cut that does not hurt. Days 8 through 14, cut smart, not hard. Now that you have the numbers, we can do something useful with them. But first, I want to push back against a piece of advice you have probably heard 100 times. The advice goes, cut everything that is not absolutely necessary. Sacrifice now so you can thrive later. Stop buying the coffee. Cancel every subscription. Live like a monk until the debt is gone. Here is the problem with that approach. It treats human beings like machines. And we are not machines. When people attempt extreme financial restriction, cutting everything overnight, eliminating all pleasure from their spending, they fail within 2 to 3 weeks on average. Not because they are weak. Because deprivation is psychologically unsustainable. The human brain experiences financial restriction the same way it experiences other forms of deprivation. It creates a pressure that eventually forces a release. The release usually looks like a spending binge that erases all the progress. Sound familiar? The question that changes the cut. Instead of asking, what can I eliminate? Ask a different question. For every item in your lifestyle spending bucket, ask, is this genuinely adding something to my life, or is it just a default habit I have never examined? These are two completely different categories, and they require two completely different responses. Consider Marcus. Marcus was a 34-year-old teacher who, when he did his bucket exercise, found he was spending $260 a month on food delivery apps. When he looked at it honestly, he realized he was using the apps about half the time out of genuine convenience or celebration, and half the time because it was simply what he did when he was tired at the end of the day. Habit. Not pleasure. He did not eliminate food delivery. He reduced his habit-driven orders by half. That saved him around $130 a month without feeling like sacrifice at all. Where the easy money is. Let me walk you through the highest yield targets, the areas where most people find money they never realized they were losing. Subscriptions are first. The average household has 11 paid subscriptions. Most people, when asked, can name 5 or 6. The rest are forgotten. Go through every single recurring charge on your statements. Cancel anything you have not actively used in the past 30 days. This alone often frees up $60 to $100 a month. Food spending is second, not because food is bad, but because the gap between what we spend on food and what we intend to spend is usually enormous. Look at your restaurant, takeout, and grocery numbers separately. You will likely find that a few small adjustments, cooking 3 nights instead of 1, create significant savings without removing any real enjoyment. Insurance is third, and this one people almost never act on. If you have car insurance, home insurance, or renter's insurance, call a competing provider today and ask for a quote. Tell them you are currently with another company and looking for better rates. Insurance companies count on inertia. They know most customers will not switch. When you make the call, you often find rates $50 to $150 per month lower. One phone call. The 15% principle. Here is the target for this week: find ways to reduce your lifestyle spending by 15%. If you are spending $1,400 a month on lifestyle, a 15% reduction is $210. That money does not disappear. It becomes your future. $210 a month is $2,520 a year. That is an emergency fund. That is a meaningful debt payment. That is the beginning of an investment account. And crucially, it is achievable without suffering. We are not talking about removing things that genuinely matter to you. We are talking about trimming what you would not actually miss if someone pointed it out. Start there. 15%. Smart, not hard. Chapter 3. Pay yourself like you mean it. Days 15 through 21, automate your savings. I want to describe how most people approach saving money, because understanding this pattern is the key to breaking it. Most people earn money. Then they pay their bills. Then they spend on life. And then, at the end of the month, if anything happens to be left over, they transfer whatever remains into savings. The problem with this system is straightforward: there is almost never anything left over. Not because the person is reckless, but because spending naturally expands to fill available income. When money sits in a checking account, it sends the brain a signal that it is available. And the brain, wired for present gratification, finds reasons to use it. This is not a character flaw. It is how human psychology works. And the solution is not to develop more willpower, it is to remove willpower from the equation entirely. The automation shift. The most powerful financial move available to an ordinary person is this: automate your savings the moment your paycheck arrives, before you have a chance to spend it. Set up a recurring automatic transfer. The day your paycheck hits your account, a fixed percentage moves to a separate savings account without any action from you. You never see it in your spendable balance. You never have to decide whether to save it. It is simply gone from your accessible money before the day is over. Start with 10%. If you earn $3,000 a month, that is $300 moving automatically. If 10% feels like too much right now, start with 5. Start with $50. The exact amount matters far less than the habit itself. Where the money should go. Do not save into your regular checking account. Do not save into a standard savings account at a traditional bank that earns a fraction of a percent in annual interest. Open a high-yield savings account. These are accounts offered by online banks, institutions like Ally Bank, Marcus by Goldman Sachs, SoFi, and others, that offer interest rates substantially higher than traditional brick-and-mortar banks. In recent years, these rates have been in the range of 4 to 5% annually on deposits, compared to the near-zero rates offered by most conventional banks. This means your savings do not just sit still. They earn money. $1,000 in a high-yield savings account at 4% earns $40 a year doing nothing. That may not sound transformative, but it compounds over time, and the psychological effect of watching your savings grow, even slightly, reinforces the behavior. The psychology of invisible money. Here is what you will discover within 3 to 4 weeks of automating your savings: you stop thinking about that money as yours. When money moves automatically, when it is never visible in your spending account, your brain reclassifies it. It is not money I could spend. It is money that is already spoken for. This shift is subtle and powerful. Think of it like a tax. When your employer withholds income tax from your paycheck, you never receive that money. So you never miss it. You build your lifestyle around what remains. Automated savings works on the same principle, except instead of going to the government, it goes to your future self. Consider the story of a nurse named Denise. Denise earned $38,000 a year and had never been able to save more than a few $100s in her life. She tried budgeting apps, savings challenges, and accountability partners. Nothing held. When she set up an automatic transfer of $200 per month, just over 6% of her income, she found that after 3 weeks, she had completely adjusted to living without it. By month 4, she had $800 saved. By month 12, she had $2,400. It was the first time in her adult life she had money in savings. She did not change her personality. She changed her system. This week, set up the transfer. Choose a high-yield account. Automate the savings. Then get out of your own way. Part 2. The Attack. Days 22 to 49. In which we stop paying the price of the past and start building toward the future. Chapter 4. Making debt your enemy, not your lifestyle. Days 22 through 28, attack your debt with a plan. I want you to understand something about high-interest debt that most people have never truly internalized. When you carry a balance on a credit card with a 20% annual interest rate, that debt is growing every single day. Every morning you wake up and have not paid it off, you owe slightly more than you did the night before. The bank is charging you for the privilege of owing them money, continuously, relentlessly, regardless of what else is happening in your life. A $2,000 credit card balance at 20% interest, with only minimum payments made, will take over 5 years to pay off and will cost you nearly $900 in interest alone. You will pay back almost 50% more than you originally borrowed. This is not a minor inconvenience. This is a machine quietly consuming your future. The complete debt picture. Your task this week begins with a simple but often avoided step. Write down every single debt you carry. Every one. The credit card with the small balance you have been ignoring. The student loan you pay automatically and never think about. The car payment. The medical debt. Everything. For each debt, write 3 things: the total balance owed, the interest rate being charged, and the minimum monthly payment. Now look at the list as a whole. This is the full weight of your debt. It may be uncomfortable to see it all in one place. But you cannot strategically eliminate something you have never clearly mapped. 2 roads out, choose one. There are 2 proven strategies for debt elimination, and both of them work. The difference between them comes down to whether you are optimizing for mathematics or for motivation. The first strategy is called the avalanche method. In this approach, you pay the minimum required payment on every single debt, every month. Then, with any additional money you have available, even if it is just $50 a month, you attack the debt with the highest interest rate first. Once that debt is gone, you redirect all of that payment toward the next highest interest rate. And so on. Mathematically, the avalanche method saves you the most money over time because you are eliminating the most expensive debts first. The second strategy is called the snowball method. Here, you again pay minimums on everything. But you direct your extra payments toward the debt with the smallest balance, regardless of interest rate. When that debt is paid off, you roll the full payment into the next smallest balance. And so on. The snowball method costs you slightly more in interest over time. But it creates a psychological momentum, the experience of actually paying off a complete debt, that many people find essential for sustaining long-term effort. Neither strategy is wrong. The right one is whichever one you will actually stick to. The phone call that could save you hundreds. Here is one additional step that takes 15 minutes and frequently delivers significant results. Call your credit card company and ask them to lower your interest rate. This sounds uncomfortable. Most people have never done it and assume it will not work. But here is the reality: credit card companies have retention teams whose job is to keep customers from leaving. When a long-time customer calls and explains that they have been loyal, that they are working on paying down their balance, and that they have received more attractive rate offers from other providers, the company will often, not always, but often, agree to a temporary or permanent rate reduction. The worst possible outcome of making this call is that they say no, and you are exactly where you were before. The best possible outcome is that your interest rate drops by several percentage points, saving you hundreds of dollars over the life of the debt. Make the call. It costs you nothing. Chapter 5. The $1,000 Wall. Days 29 through 35, build your safety net. There is a statistic that I find both startling and deeply clarifying about the state of personal finance in this country. Nearly 60% of adults cannot cover a $1,000 emergency expense without going into debt. Think about what that means in practical terms. A car that breaks down. A tooth that needs an emergency extraction. A washing machine that stops working. A medical copay for an unexpected illness. These are not catastrophic events. These are the ordinary, predictable disruptions of living a human life. And for the majority of adults, any one of them triggers a financial crisis. The result is a cycle. The emergency happens. The person goes into debt to cover it. The debt payment squeezes the monthly budget. There is even less money left over to save. And so when the next emergency arrives, and it will, the person is still unprepared. Breaking this cycle is the entire point of what we are doing this week. The number that changes everything. Your mission over the next 7 days is to build a $1,000 emergency buffer. Not your long-term savings. Not your investment account. Just $1,000 sitting in your high-yield savings account, untouched, dedicated solely to genuine emergencies. This is your financial airbag. It sits there invisibly, doing nothing, until the moment you actually need it. And when that moment comes, and it will, it is the difference between a bad day and a financial catastrophe. Getting there faster. How do you build $1,000 quickly if it feels out of reach? Let me walk you through 3 approaches that work. The first is selling things you already own. Most homes contain hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars in unused items. Electronics sitting in drawers. Clothing that has not been worn in a year. Furniture in storage. Sporting equipment gathering dust. Platforms like Facebook Marketplace, eBay, and local selling apps make this straightforward. Many people are surprised to discover they can generate $300 to $500 in a single weekend from items they genuinely did not miss. The second approach is a short burst of extra income. Food delivery. A weekend of freelance work. Tutoring. Babysitting. A few extra shifts. You do not need to sustain this, just a few weeks of focused additional effort can close a significant portion of the gap. The third is simply redirecting the savings you found in weeks 1 and 2. The subscriptions you canceled, the food delivery you reduced, the insurance quote that saved you money, funnel that directly into this emergency buffer until you hit the target. The shift that happens after. I want to describe what happens to your psychology once you cross the $1,000 mark, because I think it will motivate you through the weeks it takes to get there. Before the emergency fund, every unexpected expense is a crisis. The brain is in a constant low-level state of financial threat. The phone ringing. The dashboard light. The weird sound the furnace made. All of it carries a subconscious anxiety because you know, somewhere beneath everything, that you have no buffer between your current life and a problem. After the emergency fund, that changes. Not completely, not permanently, but meaningfully. When something goes wrong, the first thought is not, how am I going to pay for this? The first thought is, okay, I can handle this. That shift in thinking is not small. It is the foundation on which everything else gets built. Get to $1,000. Do whatever it takes this week. Then protect it. Chapter 6. The Garden You Plant Today. Days 36 through 42, start investing. People delay investing for many reasons. They think they need to understand the stock market before they start. They think they need a significant amount of money to make it worthwhile. They think they need to wait until their debt is handled, until their income is higher, until the timing feels right. I understand these feelings. They feel like reasonable caution. But they are actually a very expensive form of waiting, because the single most powerful force in investing is time. And every month you delay is a month of growth you will never recover. How ordinary people build wealth. Let me explain the mechanism that most people who build genuine wealth use, because it is almost certainly not what you imagine. They do not pick individual stocks. They do not time the market. They do not have special knowledge or insider information or brilliant analysts working for them. They buy index funds. And they do it consistently, for a long time. An index fund is a type of investment that tracks an entire market index, most commonly, the S&P 500, which is a collection of roughly 500 of the largest publicly traded companies in the United States. When you buy into an index fund, you are not betting on a single company. You are buying a tiny piece of hundreds of companies at once: Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, Johnson & Johnson, Berkshire Hathaway, and hundreds more. The performance of the S&P 500 over the past 100 years has averaged approximately 7 to 10% annually after accounting for inflation. No other common investment vehicle has matched this track record over equivalent time periods. And because you are not picking individual stocks, you do not need any particular expertise. You do not need to read financial news every morning. You do not need to understand why any specific company is performing well or poorly. You simply own a slice of the overall market, which has trended upward over time despite wars, recessions, crashes, and crises of every kind. Where to open an account? 3 brokerage firms are generally recommended for beginner investors: Fidelity, Vanguard, and Charles Schwab. All 3 are established institutions with decades of track records. All 3 offer index fund options with very low fees. All 3 are free to open an account with. Once your account is open, look for a fund that tracks the S&P 500. Each firm offers their own version. Fidelity has the Fidelity 500 Index Fund, Vanguard has the Vanguard 500 Index Fund Admiral Shares, Schwab has its own equivalent. The names differ, but the underlying investment is essentially the same. Start with your employer first. If your employer offers a 401k retirement plan, and especially if they offer a matching contribution, that is where you should start, before opening an individual account. A company match works like this: your employer agrees to contribute a certain percentage of your salary into your retirement account, matching what you put in, up to a cap. A common structure is a 3% match. For every dollar you contribute up to 3% of your salary, your employer adds an equal amount. If you earn $50,000 a year and your employer offers a 3% match, that is $1,500 of free money added to your retirement account every year, money you only receive if you contribute at least that same amount. If you are not contributing enough to capture the full match, you are leaving part of your compensation on the table. Take the full match first. Then invest additional money in individual accounts. The numbers that will make you start today. Consider this scenario. A 25-year-old begins investing $200 per month into an S&P 500 index fund. She earns an average annual return of 8% over 30 years. By age 55, she has contributed $72,000 out of pocket. Her account balance is approximately $298,000. Now consider her colleague, who waited until age 35 to start the same $200 per month. He contributes to the same fund, earns the same returns, and invests for 20 years instead of 30. His account balance at age 55 is approximately $117,000. Same monthly investment. Same returns. 10 years earlier start. The difference in outcome, nearly $180,000. The magic is not the amount. It is the time. And the time starts now. Chapter 7. What you earn is not fixed. Days 43 through 49, grow what you earn. We have spent the last 6 chapters focused on how to better manage the money you already make. And that work is essential. But there is a ceiling on what management alone can do. You can only cut expenses so far before you are living uncomfortably. You can only optimize so much before there is nothing left to optimize. At some point, the most powerful lever available to you is not reducing what goes out, it is increasing what comes in. Your income is not as fixed as it feels. The conversation most people avoid. If you have been in your current job for more than a year without a raise, it is time to have the conversation you have probably been putting off. Most people do not ask for raises. They wait to be offered them. And employers, operating in their own financial self-interest, rarely volunteer to pay people more than they feel they have to. Asking for a raise requires preparation, and it requires a different kind of framing than most people use. The most common approach, "I have been here a long time and I work hard," rarely moves the needle. It makes an emotional argument where a business argument is needed. The effective approach goes like this: you research the market rate for your role. You use platforms like Glassdoor, LinkedIn Salary, or Levels.fy, whichever is relevant to your industry, and you find out what people in equivalent positions at equivalent companies are actually earning. Then you go into the conversation with specific numbers and with a clear accounting of what you have contributed. Not how long you have been there. What you have delivered. Projects completed, problems solved, revenue generated, costs reduced, clients retained. You make the business case for your value. This conversation will feel uncomfortable. That discomfort passes. Staying silent while inflation quietly erodes your purchasing power year after year is a much worse outcome than a single awkward conversation. The side income question. If a raise is not currently possible, or if you want to accelerate your progress beyond what a raise alone could do, the next question is, what can you earn outside your primary job? I want to be clear that I am not talking about the kind of complicated, passive income systems that fill social media feeds. I am talking about something far simpler, using a skill you already have to earn additional income in your available time. Think about what you are already good at. Writing. Design. Spreadsheets and data analysis. Video editing. Teaching a subject. Managing social media. Fixing things. Cooking. Whatever it is, there is likely someone who needs it and will pay for it. Platforms like Upwork, Fiverr, and LinkedIn make it possible to offer freelance services without any particular technical knowledge. Local needs, tutoring, yard work, cleaning, pet care, can generate meaningful income with nothing more than a few posts in neighborhood groups or apps like TaskRabbit. Consider James, a 38-year-old accountant who began offering weekend tax preparation services to individuals in his area. In his first year, charging a modest fee, he earned $4,000 from roughly 40 hours of weekend work across the tax season. That $4,000 went directly onto his highest interest debt, accelerating his payoff timeline by nearly 14 months. He was not doing anything unusual. He was using what he already knew. Even an additional $300 a month changes the entire mathematics of your financial situation when combined with the habits you have already built. Your income has a ceiling only if you decide it does. This week, ask yourself where the opening might be, and take one step toward it. Part 3. The Build. Days 50 to 90. In which we stop surviving and start building something that lasts. Chapter 8. The Target on the Wall. Days 50 through 56, set a goal that excites you. We are halfway through our 90 days. And this is the week where I want to shift the conversation, not toward spreadsheets and calculations, but towards something more fundamental. Direction. Here is a pattern that derails financial progress more than almost anything else: people work hard for a few weeks or months, they improve their situation, and then they lose momentum. The urgency fades. The habits slip. Not because they are lazy, but because spend less and save more is not, by itself, a destination. It is a direction without a destination. And humans are terrible at sustaining effort toward something with no clear arrival point. The solution is specific goals. Not vague intentions. Specific, written, time-bounded goals with numbers attached. What a real goal looks like. The difference between a useful financial goal and an empty one is specificity. I want to save more money is not a goal. It is a wish. I will save $5,000 by December 31st of this year is a goal. It has a number. It has a deadline. And the moment you write it down, you can do math on it. $5,000. By December 31st. If today is May 1st, you have 8 months. Divide 5,000 by 8, you need $625 a month. That is a number you can work with. That is a number that tells you whether your current plan is adequate or whether you need to make changes. Specificity transforms a goal from an aspiration into a project. And projects are manageable. The science of written goals. Research on goal setting consistently shows that people who write down their goals are substantially more likely to achieve them than those who keep the same goals purely in their heads. The act of writing creates a different relationship to the goal. It shifts it from a mental concept to a commitment. Your brain processes written and thought goals differently. A written goal creates a kind of cognitive accountability that a mental note simply does not. Write your goal down. Put it somewhere you will see it. Your phone lock screen. A sticky note on your bathroom mirror. The front page of a notebook. It does not matter where, it matters that it is external and visible. The power of a witness. One more step this week that dramatically increases your follow-through, tell someone. A trusted friend. A family member. A partner. Even a community, a financial forum, a social media post with accountability framing. The research on accountability is consistent and clear. When we make our commitments known to others, we are significantly more likely to honor them. This is not about public pressure. It is about the natural human desire for consistency between what we say and what we do. When you tell someone your goal, you create a version of your future self that you feel compelled to live up to. This week, write the goal, do the math, and tell one person. Chapter 9. Credit, the double-edged tool. Days 57 through 63, understand and use credit wisely. Credit is one of those financial topics that people tend to feel strongly about in one of two directions. Either they believe credit cards are evil, instruments of debt that should be avoided entirely. Or they are using credit carelessly, treating it as an extension of their income rather than a borrowing tool. Both positions cause harm. And the reality is far more nuanced than either extreme. Credit, used correctly, is a tool. Like most tools, it can be used to build something or to cause damage. The outcome depends entirely on the person using it. What credit actually is. Your credit score is a numerical representation of how reliably you have borrowed and repaid money over time. It is calculated based on your payment history, the amount of debt you currently carry relative to your available credit, the age of your accounts, the types of credit you have used, and how recently you have applied for new credit. A strong credit score, generally defined as 700 or above, opens financial doors that a poor credit score keeps closed. When you apply for a mortgage, the interest rate you receive is heavily influenced by your score. On a 30-year mortgage of $300,000, the difference between a good credit score and a poor one can translate to tens of thousands of dollars in additional interest paid over the life of the loan. Your credit score affects your car insurance premiums in most states. It affects whether you can rent a desirable apartment. It affects the rate on any personal loan you might ever need. This is not an abstract financial concept. It is a number that will directly affect your cost of living for decades. Using cards without getting burned. The honest rule for credit cards is this: only charge what you already have the cash to cover. A credit card used this way is genuinely beneficial. You earn rewards, cashback, airline miles, points, on purchases you were going to make regardless. You build your credit history month by month. And you pay zero interest, because you pay the full balance before any interest accrues. A credit card used as a substitute for income that is not there, spending money you do not have because the card makes it feel distant from your bank account, becomes a debt machine charging 20% or more annually. The psychological challenge is real. Physical distance from money, the fact that a card swipe feels less tangible than handing over cash, genuinely does alter spending behavior. Studies have consistently shown that people spend more when using cards than when using cash. Knowing this, you can counter it deliberately. You can treat your credit card as a debit card in your mind, checking your bank balance before purchases, not your credit limit. Building it intentionally. If your credit score is currently low, or if you have limited credit history, here is how to build it sustainably over time. Open one credit card, start with a low limit if you are concerned about overuse. Use it for one recurring, manageable bill, like a streaming service or a utility. Set up automatic full payment each month. Then leave it alone. This approach does three things simultaneously: it establishes payment history, it keeps your utilization low, and it requires essentially no active management once the automation is set up. Good credit is not built through clever tricks. It is built through time, consistency, and low balances. Protect it deliberately. It will pay dividends for decades. Chapter 10. Your Real Financial Report Card. Days 64 through 70, track your net worth. We tend to measure our financial health by our income. Someone earns $80,000 a year, and we think, they must be in good shape. Someone earns $40,000, and we worry, that must be a struggle. But income tells us almost nothing about actual financial health. A person earning $200,000 a year who spends $210,000 is in worse financial shape than a person earning $50,000 who saves $8,000 of it. Income is the rate of flow. Net worth is the accumulation. And accumulation is what determines financial freedom. How to calculate your net worth. The calculation is not complicated. List everything you own that has monetary value. Your savings account balances. Your investment accounts. The current value of any retirement accounts. If you own a home, the current market value minus what you still owe on the mortgage, that difference is your equity. If you own a car outright, its approximate value. Any other assets that could be converted to cash. Add all of those up. This is your total assets. Now list everything you owe. Your mortgage balance. Car loan. Student loans. Credit card balances. Any personal loans. Any other debt obligations. Add those up. This is your total liabilities. Assets minus liabilities equals net worth. If the number is negative, if you owe more than you own, do not panic. This is extremely common, particularly for younger adults carrying student loan debt. Your net worth at age 25 is not your destiny. It is your starting point. Why this number matters more than anything else. Net worth is the truest measure of financial progress because it captures everything simultaneously. Your savings. Your investments. Your debt reduction. Your asset accumulation. All of it in a single number. When you track this number monthly or quarterly, something powerful happens. You watch a negative number slowly move towards zero. You watch zero become a small positive number. You watch the number grow. And each time the line moves in the right direction, your brain reinforces the behaviors that caused it. Think of it like a scoreboard. The joy of watching your score improve is a genuine motivational force, and unlike obsessing over individual accounts or specific savings goals, net worth gives you the complete picture. This week, calculate your net worth for the first time. Write it down with today's date. Set a calendar reminder to recalculate it in 3 months. Then watch what happens. Chapter 11. The honest check-in nobody wants to do. Days 71 through 77, review and course correct. Somewhere around week 8 or 9 of any meaningful change effort, something predictable happens. The initial momentum fades. The urgency that was so sharp in week 1 has dulled. Some old habits have quietly crept back in. The automatic savings are still running, but the mindful spending decisions are less consistent than they were in week 2. This is not failure. This is normal. This is how human change works, not in a straight ascending line, but in an irregular pattern of progress and regression, with the overall trajectory gradually moving forward if you keep showing up. But you have to actually show up. Which is what this week is about. The review that most plans skip. The reason most financial plans ultimately fail is not that they are poorly designed. It is that nobody ever checks whether they are being followed. People create budgets they never look at again. They set goals they never revisit. They establish systems they abandon when life gets complicated. And because there is no built-in review mechanism, they do not realize how far they have drifted until it is too late to course correct within the window they set for themselves. This week, you are going to do the thing that separates people who succeed from people who try and quit. Spend 1 hour reviewing the past 2 months. Pull up your bank statements again. Compare your current spending in each bucket to where you started. Look at your savings balance. Check on your debt balances. Look at your net worth calculation. What has improved? Acknowledge it. Genuinely acknowledge it. Progress that goes unnoticed does not motivate further progress. What has slipped? Name it honestly. Not with self-judgment, with curiosity. Why did that specific category drift? Was it a one-time event or a pattern? What would it take to correct it? The art of course correction. Course correction is not the same as starting over. If a pilot flying from New York to Los Angeles discovers mid-flight that they are 10 degrees off course, they do not land the plane and begin again. They make a small adjustment. They recalibrate. They continue. The same principle applies here. If you discover that your food spending crept back up in weeks 5 through 8, you do not throw out everything you have built. You recommit to the adjustment you identified in week 2. You re-establish the behavior. You continue. Financial change is not linear, and it is not permanent without ongoing attention. The people who genuinely transform their finances are not those who never slip, they are those who review, recalibrate, and continue. This is the week to do exactly that. Chapter 12. Building for the life that comes next. Days 78 through 90, the long game. You have reached the final stretch of your 90 days. And I want to acknowledge something before we talk about what comes next. Getting to this point required effort. Real effort, not the passive kind of effort where you read a book and feel inspired for a weekend, but the active, consistent, sometimes uncomfortable effort of actually changing behaviors. Looking at numbers you did not want to see. Making choices that felt small in the moment but added up. Showing up for yourself even when the momentum was low. That effort is meaningful. The habits forming in you right now are worth more than the specific dollar amounts in your accounts. The 3 questions that define your future. In these final days, I want you to sit with 3 questions. Not rush through them, actually sit with them. Where do you want to be financially in 1 year? Think specifically. Not vaguely better. Specifically, what will your savings balance be? Will you have eliminated a specific debt? Will you have opened an investment account? Will you have had the salary conversation? Write down one concrete answer. Where do you want to be in 5 years? This is where the picture gets more meaningful. 5 years is enough time for genuine transformation, not just stabilization, but growth. Perhaps your debt is eliminated. Perhaps your net worth has crossed into significant positive territory. Perhaps you have saved a down payment. Perhaps your investment accounts have real momentum. What does 5 years of these habits look like? Write it down. Where do you want to be in 10 years? 10 years of consistent financial behavior, saving, investing, eliminating debt, growing income, creates outcomes that most people never experience because they never began. At 8% average investment returns, 10 years of consistent monthly investing can create an account that begins to feel like real security. Write what that looks like for you. The system that maintains everything. Here is the structural element that keeps all of this going beyond day 90. Set a quarterly financial review. Once every 3 months, mark it on your calendar right now, you sit down with your numbers. You calculate your net worth. You review your spending. You check on your savings and investment progress. You adjust your targets as life evolves. 90 minutes, 4 times a year. That is 6 hours of deliberate financial attention annually. That is all it takes to maintain what you have built and continue building over time. The people who build genuine financial security are not geniuses. They are not lucky. They are simply people who built a system, maintained it with occasional attention, and did not stop. What consistency produces? Let me paint a picture of what 10 years of these habits looks like in practical terms. Consider a 30-year-old who today begins the practices in this book. She automates $300 per month into savings and investments. She eliminates her credit card debt within 2 years using the avalanche method. She asks for a raise and receives one, then a year later begins a small freelance income. Her net worth, which started at negative $12,000 from student loans, crosses zero at year 3 and grows to $85,000 by year 10. She did not do anything dramatic. She did not take financial risks. She did not get lucky. She followed a system, maintained it, adjusted it when life required, and did not stop. At 40, she has options that she would not have had otherwise. She can make different decisions about where she works, how she works, where she lives, how she responds to setbacks. Financial security does not just mean money, it means choices. And choices mean freedom. That is what we have been building toward all along. Epilogue. The person you become. I want to close with something that is not about money. Or rather, it is about money, but only insofar as money is a proxy for something more fundamental. The 90 days you have just completed are not really about bank balances and spreadsheets and interest rates, although all of those things matter. They are about something harder to quantify, the relationship you have with your own future. Most financial struggle is not primarily a mathematical problem. It is a time horizon problem. It is the very human challenge of making choices today that favor a future self you cannot yet see or feel or touch. The version of you at 50 who has real security, who has choices, who responds to unexpected events from a position of strength, that person benefits from every decision you make today. But that person does not exist yet, and they cannot advocate for themselves in the moment of temptation or inertia. What you have done over these 90 days is begin to advocate for that future self. Every time you checked the number before spending. Every automatic transfer you set up. Every debt payment you made deliberately. Every month you tracked your net worth. Every conversation about money you had with yourself honestly, those were acts of care towards someone you have never met, the person you will be 10, 20, 30 years from now. That is worth more than any specific dollar amount. Because it means you have changed the way you think, not just what you do. People who change what they do, but not how they think, revert. The diet ends and the old eating returns. The budget is abandoned when life gets complicated. The savings plan collapses when something tempting appears. But people who genuinely change how they think, who internalize a different relationship with money, who begin to experience it as a tool for building a life rather than a source of anxiety and deprivation, those people do not revert. Because there is nothing to revert to. The old way of thinking is gone. I believe you are in the second category. The fact that you are still here, still listening, still with this material, tells me something about you. You are not someone who gives up. You are someone who needed a plan, and found one. Now go live it. Final words. A quarterly reminder to keep going. Set this reminder in your phone right now. Title it, Financial Check-In, Review Everything. Set it to recur every 90 days from today. When it goes off, open your accounts. Update your net worth calculation. Review your spending. Look at your goals. Make adjustments. Then close the app and go live your life. That is the entire maintenance plan. That is all this requires from you going forward. Wealth is not built in inspired weekends. It is not built in dramatic gestures. It is built in the boring, consistent, repeated application of good decisions over time. You do not need to be extraordinary to become financially secure. You need to be consistent. You have the plan. You have done the work. You know what to do. The only thing left is to keep going. End of the money shift. Estimated reading time, 85 to 100 minutes. Estimated audiobook runtime at standard narration pace, 1 hour 20 minutes, 1 hour 35 minutes.